The moment you think you can't be brought down, you will be brought down. So I said, start with compassion, lead with gratitude. And the third thing is focus on what will actually make you happy. Really, we're born to help others. And if we can't help them, at least don't hurt them.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Jay Shetty, and my take on his top 10 rules to success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Say thank you more often.
This is the beautiful thing that happens. When you say thank you to someone who's kind to you, it does 3 things. The first thing is you recognize kindness. So now you're triggering your mind to start recognizing kindness, and you're now recognizing kindness in them. The second thing you do is you reinforce kindness in them. They realize, they're like, oh, when I'm kind, people appreciate it. Right. So I'm going to be more kind. So you've now reinforced kindness within them. And the third thing is you help them repeat it. Now that you've shown them that their kindness is reciprocated, they're now going to be kind to more people. So when you recognize kindness in someone, it reinforces that belief that kindness is amazing, and then they repeat that kindness to other people. So now you've started this domino effect of kindness just by thanking one person.
Rule number 2, have a student mindset.
The Zen story by the tea, and I love Zen stories, and the book's full of them, as you know. The Zen story is where a student approaches a Zen master and a teacher and is complaining about all the challenges in their life and everything they've got going on, and feels like they also have a sense of ego of they know everything that's happening. And the Zen master sees a cup that's full there and starts pouring tea into this cup. And the cup just starts overflowing, and the student's looking at it going like, what are you doing? Like, how does this make any sense? And the Zen master says, well, you're just like this cup, right? I can't put any more in, you can't take any more in because you're already full. Like, you think you're full, you think you're done. And that's the point, that you have to always go back to that student mindset. You have to always go back to that emptiness. And I think one of the reasons why we struggle with that is we think that when we're full, we're safe. Our ego makes us believe that when you're full, when you think you know it all, that's when you're safe. The craziest thing is, that's when you're at your weakest. And I think that's what we all miss, that when you think, if you think of any company that's ever thought that they had figured it out, that is when they were at their most weakest point. If there's a fighter in a boxing match that thinks that they have perfected this game, that's when they're their weakest. When you're in a relationship and you think, oh, my life is perfect and everything's going great, that's when you're at your weakest. But we find safety in certainty, when actually that's what makes us complacent and lose the plot. So that story illustrates the need to always reconnect. Not that we're empty, that we have nothing, but that there is so much more to gain, there is so much more to learn.
Rule number 3, have humility.
The ego makes you think you're untouchable. And the ego makes you think that you are, that nothing about you can ever go wrong, or you're perfect, or not even that, but the ego,
nothing can bring you down. Nothing can hurt you.
Correct. The moment you think you can't be brought down, you will be brought down. Right. The moment you think that you can't, like one of my teachers would always pray that he never, and he's been a monk for 40 years, he would always pray that he would never fall to his temptations. And we said to him, you haven't fallen to your temptations for 40 years. Why do you pray for that? He goes, I haven't fallen because I pray for it.
Wow.
Like he was like, because I pray for it, because I'm aware.
Not just because I think it's gonna, yeah.
He's aware. And there's a beautiful story of Benjamin Franklin, where he talks about before he died, I believe he had 13 or 14 precepts. These were qualities that he wanted to live by and gain. So they were like simplicity, integrity, virtues, all these powerful things. And he was asked when he was on his deathbed, which was the one he didn't accomplish. And he said the last one, that was humility.
Rule number 4, live the life of service.
What is the power of service, and how can we, without going to an ashram, how can we take our strengths and really give them purpose and meaning?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things with service in the ashram is service is a part of your daily routine. So there is no choice about whether you serve or not. So that's a really great way to live because you're almost exposed to lots of different types of service. So some of that would be cooking for the homeless or underprivileged children who don't have access to warm meals. Some of it would be building sustainable villages inside which people can live and villages can find a home and an economy. So you're always connected to doing something for others. But
and if I was going to ask a monk, why are we doing this? What would they say?
They would say, because I believe that you have to see how you can be useful to others. So the Dalai Lama probably puts the best, that really we're born to help others, and if we can't help them, at least don't hurt them. And to me, that really sums it up, that we're born to help others. We're born with different gifts, with different geniuses, with different talents to improve the lives of others. And the question I always get from someone in the audience who wants to ask me an awkward question will be, and there's always one, right? And so the person will say, well, Jay, how does someone who has nothing in India or Africa do this? Like someone in like a really slum situation or a village situation, and they'll always pick on India and Africa. I'm not saying those. And I'll be like, no, but this isn't for them. I'm speaking to an audience that has an education, that has resources, that has network. Like I'm speaking to people who can make a difference. So anyone who is in that area of society has a responsibility. So anything that you're given in life, you're seen as a caretaker of. And the way you take the best care of it is that you use it in the service of others. And that purifies you from becoming attached to it and it feeling like it actually eats you alive and feeds your ego, as opposed to you now being purified and cleansed of wealth, success, fame, status, or time, or whatever you have, and energy, and you're now using it for the highest cause. So that's what they would say. They would say it's the highest cause of using what I've been given in the service of others, whatever you've been given. Hey everyone, I have been reading a bit from my friend's book, Evan Carmichael, Built to Serve, and I wanted to share this with you. So, according to a study by Carnegie Mellon University, people with supportive spouses are more likely to give themselves the chance to succeed. They studied 163 married couples and found that people with supportive spouses were more likely to take on potentially rewarding challenges. Those who accepted challenges experienced more personal growth, happiness, and psychological well-being. Now, I can truly say that I've experienced that in my life. When I first met my wife, I was just starting out. I had never released a video. I hadn't created any content, and she was such an important part of feeling supported on that journey. So whether you're in a relationship, whether you're dating, whether you're married, or even if you're single, being supported by friends and a strong community is important. Built to Serve by Evan Carmichael. Great book on how you can find your purpose and also on reminding us that we can all make a difference in the world. Thanks, Evan.
Rule number 5, implement the 70% rule.
I've always had a rule since I started that all my videos are 70% complete. So that's my rule.
Yes.
It's 70%. That's all you're getting.
Yeah.
There's words that I say wrong. There's fumbles. There may be a few mistakes here and there. The editing may be slight, but it's like my rule was 70% because that journey from 70 or 75 to 99 could take decades.
Yeah.
Like you can never, I would never release something. And I remember in 2016, after my first ever video, one of my first videos that went viral, I actually got so scared because it was almost like, oh, I have to live up to that now. So I remember not creating.
Yeah.
And so I went from creating one video a week to creating one video a month. And guess what? I learned less. I was engaging less to connect with my audience to understand what they needed and what I was giving.
Yeah.
And I was trying less ideas, which meant that I wasn't learning.
You weren't learning as much.
I wasn't growing at all. I wasn't progressing.
And the world was being taken from getting more beauty from you.
Which came from a place of not thinking like that, which came from a place of not trying to be perfect. Exactly. The original video that did well came from a genuine place of just wanting to serve and trying to figure it out. And then all of a sudden, we're not serving anymore.
So good.
And so I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And I was like, actually, and then last year when we started making more videos, I can honestly hand on my heart say that when we started doing 3 videos a week, I started to learn so much more.
Yes.
I was like, oh, I really like it when I write like this. And I really like it when I create like this. And the audience really responds bonds when I share it this way. And I was learning so much more.
Yeah,
And I was feeling more fulfilled by making more mistakes, but learning more. And so my mistakes increased.
Yeah.
But your learning increased too. Which was a much more fulfilling place to be, even though it was tough at times, but it was fulfilling.
Rule number 6, learn the tricks of your mind.
So we used to play this game in the monastery where every time you lose to your mind, you put a scoreboard up and you put a 1 for the mind and 0 for you.
When you lose to the mind, meaning what?
Like, so let's say you make a commitment. So I make a commitment that I'm not gonna eat sugar.
And then you do.
In 2020, and I do.
The mind beats you.
The mind beats me to it. So I'm gonna put a 1 for the mind and a 0 for me,
That's
right?
great.
It's great. It's competing with yourself in a good way. It's fun, yeah. And people do this with like, I guess now with like dollar jars or whatever, like you put a dollar in, you say, and you swear. Yeah. But that doesn't make sense because you end up making money every time you swear. So it doesn't, but if you beat your mind and you put it, it's great.
Yes.
So you have to start learning the tricks of your mind. When and how does your mind fool you into making bad decisions?
That's good.
Rule number 7, share your love language.
You may have someone who loves you deeply. You've just never articulated what your love language is.
You have to speak up.
You have to share it. You can't, no one can read in between the lines. Yeah. You can't expect that person to figure it out by looking at you. You need to tell them, this is how I feel most loved, right? This is what I need to feel loved. And I see so many couples that get scared about saying this or doing this, or it's like hard for your ego because being able to have enough vulnerability and openness to say to your wife, I need you to tell me I've got this, right? Like words of affirmation, that I need words of affirmations. And, the ego goes, oh no, I don't really need that for my wife. But you have to share it. If you don't tell them that, how are they going to know? You got to put your ego aside and be really open and honest.
Rule number 8, focus on your own happiness.
One of the things that envy forces us to do, and this is where we start getting into trouble, is that envy makes us feel that someone else has an ideal life or that that life is ideal. So what we start doing is copying that life. What we're already doing is that we're following a path that's not right for us. You're already taking a blueprint of someone else's life, saying that blueprint works for you and working on it. Many years down the line, you reflect and you think, why did I waste all that time? That wasn't right for me. So I said, start with compassion, lead with gratitude. And the third thing is focus on what will actually make you happy. Ask yourself, what actually would make me happy? Okay, that person's got a great holiday, but actually, that's not even my ideal holiday. And a lot of people end up spending that money, going on that holiday, and then not having fun, and then realizing that later.
Rule number 9, don't rely on chemistry.
So the 5 types of attraction are physical, financial, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I'll explain what I mean by all of them. So physical is obvious. Yep. She or he is hot.
Attracted to them.
I'm attracted to them. Financial or wealth. I like what they own. I like what they have. I like what they've achieved. I like that he went to Princeton or Harvard. I like that she's a scientist or a CEO. I like that she's a supermodel. Like you like their status, right? So you're attracted to that. The third thing that we're attracted to is people's mental abilities. This is like when you're attracted to someone's mind. Like you just love the way they think. You love the way they articulate themselves. You love all of that. Like you're attracted to that. The fourth is the emotional. This is when you're attracted to someone's emotional intelligence. You're like, oh, they're very caring. They're compassionate. They're supportive. They have these good traits. And the fifth and final one is spiritual, where you're like, you're connected to that person's values on a very deep level, like what they really live by. Now notice the first 3, I equate them to chemistry. And the last 2 I equate to compatibility. So the first 3 are chemistry, and most of us get involved in a relationship based on the first 3. But here's the issue. You can feel chemistry multiple times per day. You can feel it with the receptionist, you can feel it with your personal trainer, you can feel it with the barista at the coffee shop, you can feel it with the waiter or the waitress. The spark, you can feel that anywhere. Like you can find someone attractive by one of those qualities every single day. And the challenge is we get into a relationship based on simply one of the first 3. And there's nothing wrong with that as a starting point, it just can't be the end point. And so what we do is we keep convincing ourselves that the first 3 of chemistry is more powerful than the last 2 of compatibility, and we're letting chemistry do the heavy lifting. And it can't. We're making chemistry do the heavy lifting, the heavy work, the like pull and push and like, okay, like you just take care of this. That's why so many people rely on good sex to save a relationship.
They always be in conflict.
Totally.
If the values and the compatibility are not there and you're relying on chemistry, there'll always be some conflict.
Always.
Yeah.
And chemistry really easily is those top three, and which is good to have, so you should, but my point is...
You need to have both.
You need to have both. But you can't just say, because I'm mentally attracted to how that person thinks, that's good marriage material. That's not good enough. You can't say because we make broad generalizations. We say things like, oh, because he or she has a top degree from a top college or a business school and they're at a top company, they must be really kind, loving, and organized. It's like, what?
Right.
Like, how did you
be
just...
a good parent, yeah.
Yeah, must have had good parents. How did you just draw that parallel? And so that's the way I would talk about entering a relationship is it can start with the first three, but don't let it end without the last two.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is accept your reality.
Becoming a monk was my biggest dream growing up. From that time period that I made the monk at 18, which we spoke about the last time I was here. And so that became like my identity from 18 to 22 and then 22 to 25 when I lived as a monk. So it's like that's been my identity for 7 years, at least in my heart and my head. And so when you get to the end of a self-awareness journey, which is actually the beginning, but you get to the end of it because you're like, oh, I'm not a monk anymore. And I'm sure you've gone through similar things like, oh, I'm not a CEO anymore of this, right? Of a business that does this. Or someone else may go through, I'm not married anymore. I'm now divorced. I am now not single anymore, or I'm not alone. I've got kids, right? It's like we all go through these identity transitions in our life. And to me, going from being a monk to not being a monk was the hardest transition that I'd been through at that time. And the question that I'm having is, I'm having reflections on who I truly am and what my skills are, what my strengths are, what my passion is, what my compassion is. And I'm saying, I want to share all of this in like a cool way through entertainment. And I love movies, and that's why the book's full of like pop culture references. And it's who I am and what I love about myself. And then I'm going, but this doesn't align with what monk life is meant to be in a sacred way. And that is like looking in the mirror and going, oh, like I'm not comfortable with that. So when I share that with my teacher and we're having this discussion, his advice, and I think this is the part that you're referring to, he says to me that there's students that come to university and then they become professors, and there are students that come to the university and then they go out and become entrepreneurs or go out and work. And he says, which do you think are better? I'm like, I mean, neither really. Like, I can't really choose what makes someone better. And he was just like, that's the point. You came here. Some people stay at the monastery and go on to become senior monks and teachers. And some people will go out and do what they do outside. And he goes, but neither is better. And it was the simplest advice. It's one of those pieces of advice that it's all about the person that says it and not necessarily what you're hearing. But for me, it just clarified the judgment I had, the attachment I had, that I could only be happy and purposeful in this way. And that's really what we're all struggling with, that currently we all have a projector screen up here that goes, this is what life's meant to look like for it to be happy. And then down here, we have the reality version of what life actually looks like. And we go, oh no, they don't match. That doesn't match. That's not working. That means I'm going in the wrong direction. The funny thing is, the version you have doesn't exist at all. It's just an imagination. It's virtual reality. And the reality that you're experiencing could actually be getting you closer to that goal than you even think, but you just don't want to go down that path because it doesn't look like the one you imagine. And that's where I was at. I was having to go down a path that I didn't imagine looked like success. But then the question is, well, what does success look like then? And it definitely doesn't look like the version in your head. So to me, I started to realize, and I genuinely believe this, and your affirmation is very useful to me, the 3 years of my life living as a monk were like being at monk school, and the last 7 years have been the exam. And everything in this book is stuff that I've tried and tested in the last 7 years. I learned it at monk school, but I tested it in reality. And I'm only sharing what in the last 7 years has perfectly worked for me to feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. That doesn't mean I don't have off days. That doesn't mean that I'm happy all the time. It doesn't mean that I don't get angry. It doesn't mean that I don't get upset, but I'm going in the direction that I want to be going in.
Now, I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? When you watch something and get motivated and just get inspired, you have a 35% chance of actually following through. But when you get motivated and then you actually create an action plan for what you're going to do, you increase it from 35% to 91% chance of you actually following through. And when you share your plan publicly, that jumps to 95% chance of following through. So I want that for you. I want to know your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week. Put it down in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
I like getting rid of visual triggers. I think the challenge in a lot of our lives is that we're surrounded by the same sounds, the same sights,
right,
and the same people that we were in our past. And I see this with anything, and I'm sure you felt this. When you went deeper into your faith, did your circles change?
100%.
Right. When you went deeper into your faith, did what you look at change?
100%.
Right. So you look at
my heart changed.
Your heart changed, because, but internal and external.
Yes, because for me, when I transformed in my faith, it was a transformation of my heart.
Yes.
Not about what I was actually doing or not doing.
Correct. And that's what I feel for anyone. Anyone that I've witnessed and observed go through transformation in their life, their environments have changed. And so for me, a lot of us are making it harder for yourself. It's like saying, I want to start working out every day, but I don't own any trainers, right? It's like, that's not going to work. It's like doing the opposite. Like, I want to go on a diet, but I'm going to keep chocolate cake in my refrigerator, right? Like, it's that. So you're saying,
so you're enabling
I want to get over the past, but I'm going to keep my ex's sweater right next to me, and I'm going to keep all these text messages that I can keep reading through again.
Why do people go back and read text messages?
Because
from someone that broke their heart.
Because nostalgia and imagination is more powerful, right? The feeling of nostalgia, and this is in studies too, like the research behind nostalgia is you always think things were better in the past with something like that. Ooh. So you read a message and you're like, oh, but they loved me so much. And now all you're doing is reality's here, and you've got your own version of reality playing here. So you're basically writing your own movie script up here when reality is telling you this. And nostalgia is that script.
It's that fantasy that's never going to become.
It's that fantasy that isn't real. So it's you saying, I don't want to accept what is, and I'm trying to accept what if.
Those people who can't get over that hump, what do you tell them?
One of the biggest things, like,
do you really want to?
No. It's a good conversation. I think one of the biggest things I say to people is just like, let's kind of break their space that they're in. It's almost like that person needs a space change, and they need to get out of that zone. And so for me, I'm always encouraging people to start doing new things. I think it's so powerful when you go and have a new experience. When you try something new, you join a new class, you've never done it before. Because guess what? It's about finding yourself again. So you're now learning new things about yourself. You're now falling in love with yourself.
It's about falling in love with yourself.
Correct. And I think that the biggest mistake we make in that time is everyone's telling you, oh, when's the rebound? Like, are you going to date this guy? When are you going to start dating again? Or this girl? When are you going to be out there again? And it's almost like, well, no, maybe it's about I go inside this time and spend some time with myself. And I think new experiences are a beautiful way of doing that, because you only learn new things about yourself when you do new things with yourself.
If you want 10 more awesome rules from Jay Shetty, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Your purpose is like a rare jewel and a rare gemstone. And imagine you were walking around with the most expensive diamond or jewel in the world.